TikTok right now is kind of like being an early supporter of Trump, where like everyone is, but no one will admit it. And it's funny because conservatives and conservative talk loves to hate on social media, loves to hate on TikTok. Every time Hannah mentions she has a TikTok on this show,
they go ballistic.
She gets, people are super mad. At the same time, she gets tons of new followers.
I know.
Yeah, so we know y'all are on TikTok.
I made a pander, I guess, for followers the other day. I had 299 followers, and I was asking to get to 300, and I think I got to 305.
Woo, look at you. All right. Well, there's other stuff going on. The weather, of course, on the top of everyone's mind and on the top of everyone's car and roof, and the lightning is like crazy, unbelievable.
It's nasty. I mean, the lightning is blinding.
Don't fly a kite in this weather.
And there is so much, I was shocked, there's so much water on the road.
Yeah.
You really are going to, I mean, we say this,
hydroplaning.
But really, I mean, I had a moment where it kind of took my breath away. So you really do need to kind of slow down this morning.
John, I already told Stephanie this, but you know what Randy said to me this morning?
Oh, boy. Here we go. I did not know.
He compared me to his dog.
I did not.
Rude.
She said,
he loves his dog.
It started thundering, and I was like, ooh, Randy, have I ever told you that storms make me anxious? He goes, oh, you're like our pit bull boxer mix Mia.
Mia, yeah.
It's like, oh, thanks.
No, what I should have said is that behavior mimics what our pit bull boxer mix Mia. She's the toughest thing ever. I've seen her kill a live raccoon. I mean, take and dismember a live raccoon, and yet it's really back and forth, and it's dead. And I had to fling the raccoon into the lake, get rid of it. At any rate, that was another story. And so this tough dog, and here she is. She cowers into the bathroom and curls up on the bath mat. I mean, it's hilarious.
I
had a bird dog once, Boozer the bird dog, who was so terrified of storms. When I was raising bird dogs, he tore up his chain link pen and ran off. And the neighbor's father lived 10 miles away. Weeks later, found him there.
Isn't that something? Yeah, they
get
crazy.
Scared.
John, how long is this stuff supposed to last? And does Jeff City still have some power outages?
Well, we're in a power outage, it looks like, on the west side of Jefferson City. Our Zimmer Communications facility included is up and running on the generator. Lights are all dark at McDonald's and the businesses around the area. We're looking at this round. We're under watch until about noon. And there was a severe thunderstorm warning for Howard County, and it just expired about 10 minutes ago. So now they're talking another round with even potential for bigger hail, egg size or larger by this evening.
Ugh.
Wow. Something else. Well, I can just see the dent repair guys getting all geared up. Here we go again. It just seems to be
the roofers potentially.
And the roofers, a perennial, it's a perennial hailstorm thing. And I was there was a dent repair, a local dent repair shop. Oh, a Tiger dent. Anyway, a couple of really nice guys at the Como Man Show, and I talked to them and I said, "Hey, I've got a dent. It's actually on the side panel of my, Big A truck. And and I talked to them, and they're a local guy, and they said, there's some guys that travel that do a decent job, but like every industry, you can have 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 bad apples that give a terrible reputation to the whole industry. But there are local people, that do a lot of that kind of
work. The
work.
guys who specialize in that paintless dent repair.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Man, oh man, the guys who do it for real are artists.
It's an art. You are so right. It is absolutely an art.
And as the child of a former auto insurance adjuster, don't try to fake hail damage because they can figure it out pretty easily.
Wait.
They know the dent a ball peen hammer makes.
Yes.
Someone tries to fake. Why would you fake hail damage on a car?
Because you want insurance money.
We do have a cultural problem, don't we, ladies and gentlemen?
There it is. That's why rates are where they are, because fraud has a lot to do with it.
I think if someone does that and they're caught at it, they should have a ball peen hammer taken to their head.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I mean, what is the matter with people? I just don't get it. It's hard enough to make it through this life when you try to follow the rules, much less when you don't. You know that as an attorney. People make the most stupid decisions that they know better.
They do know better.
And it never works out well.
It never works out. I think we need to implement a new rule.
Yeah.
I put this on my Twitter yesterday that, like, when you were young and you were in school and you were like, you know what, I'm just feeling kind of sick. I'm going to stay in bed today. I'm not going to do my schoolwork.
Tell me,
Ferris Bueller.
Tell me, ache. Yeah.
And then mom and dad were like, you know what? Then you can't do anything in the evening. No sports, no birthday parties, nothing. Because yesterday the Senate showed up, and then I guess they decided, you know what? The weather's really nice. We're all going to go home.
Yeah.
Hey, they've been productive lately. They've been doing their job for like a solid 3 days.
Really?
They're still out of here at noon on Thursdays. Don't kid yourself.
And the weather was really nice. Spring break is coming up, and they said. So what happened yesterday was, I believe, learning from Twitter, is that Senator Coleman had been in the House the day before talking about the initiative petition reform stuff. She wants the ballot candy back on.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the Senate stripped it off. Other senators did not, especially the Democrat senators, did not take to that very well. And yesterday they said, yeah, we don't appreciate her comments yesterday, so we're basically going to shut down the Senate today and nothing's going to happen.
I heard from someone that was there that they asked the question, like, well, would you ever consider PQing this? And apparently she mentioned the fatal word. That was a triggering word.
It was.
And just because it was brought up in a I'm sure it was a rhetorical fashion.
The nuclear option.
First of all, for those who may not understand all this language, first of all, what's ballot candy? It's not like one of the staffers had cotton candy on their fingers when they were handing out copies of it.
It's a new term, I think. I mean, it's newer because someone pointed out, with Clean Missouri and all that Sean Nicholson stuff, he always had this on there. So essentially, if you have something that maybe pulls, 50-50, the
Sorry,
thunder
I'm a little hungry.
is rolling, then you can put in all this good stuff that then might entice people to vote for it.
I see. But might take the other side away from it,
and
too.
so
That's the idea, yeah.
But then if you concede that, you're giving something back. So that's another strategy.
So here what they're saying is, the real meat of this legislation, this proposal, this constitutional amendment is initiative petition reform. And you're putting things on like non-citizen voting that will get people to vote for it that wouldn't otherwise vote for initiative petition reform. So that's what we're talking about with ballot candy. The dreaded PQ is the previous question in the Senate. It is used to end debate. It oftentimes, Brian could probably give us the history. There have been sessions, I think, where it's been not used at all. There have been sessions where it has been used kind of frequently, but when it is used, it is pretty much considered the nuclear option, and folks really it dislike it.
Yeah, and even lawmakers in both parties, you don't want to have to do it, obviously. And I remember it was used, and I want to say 2007 or 2008 when there was a bill. It had to do with English as a second language. It was something like that. They almost had to use it with tort reform, but it is very rare. The issue is, and it's complex. Stephanie knows this very well. The problem is if you PQ. And there have been Republicans that have wanted to PQ, by the way, Bill Eigel before too. But so the bottom line is if you do PQ someone, the other side, I don't think they were going to do it to Eigel. Let's say they do it to the Democrats, or they PQ the Democrats on this bill or something else. The Democrats essentially can shut the chamber down by forcing everything to be read and almost nothing else. So if you're going to do it, it's got to be your most important bill because you're probably not going to get much else done. But it's still very rare to be used. But again,
they changed the bar on them too, didn't they, Brian? A couple years ago, because forever it was it had to be 5 senators for the resolution, and then they changed the law to 10.
Yeah, and I go back. That's a very good point, John. But I also go back to, and I talked about it yesterday. The old days, as I call it, the '90s, where actually things got done. There were still, and the Democrats were in the supermajority. There were Democrats that filibustered other Democrats' bills quite a bit. But they also had the ability after that to work together. One senator told me, then your ally today may be your enemy on a bill tomorrow, but you don't really get upset with them because you're going to be your ally. In this day and age, I don't think they view it quite the same. Of course, those guys had been around for 30 and 40 years.
Yeah.
So it was just completely different. And I don't.
They used it during one of the special sessions 4 or 5 years ago, as I recall. And I don't even remember what the bill was.
I don't remember. Yeah. remember Ford Motor Company? Chuck Ferguson had a great big filibuster, and the Republicans wanted that, and they, some people wanted to cut him off, but in the end, they just decided let's let him just speak, and he did for about 36 hours straight on the floor until he had to go to the bathroom, and then he had finally end the filibuster.
On the other hand, I heard Ann Coulter on a podcast overnight, because I listen to podcasts overnight, saying she's really hoping for more gridlock. Gridlock's a good thing. She was talking about the national level. I mean, gridlock, maybe there's nothing wrong with that. I don't know.
Kind of like the old debate about, hey, they didn't pass many bills this year, and the response is, well, good.
Yeah, it's a good year. They didn't get in our face, didn't get in our way. And people have different feelings about that. But if there ever was a reason to maybe think about a PQ, our constitutional amendment process is way, way too, it's just too accommodating to crazy ideas that then get enshrined in that document rather than become legislative issues. I think, don't most people agree it's just too easy to change that document?
Most people don't agree, actually.
And here's the other
most
thing,
people
Randy.
I talk to don't like that.
I say
this.
Because
I talk to rational people.
I say it all the time. I say it all the time, but we are at the age where it frustrates me that I have to come on here almost every morning and urge people to read the bills themselves. Don't read what somebody says on Twitter. Stephanie said it best. Don't look at what somebody in Washington. Read the bill, but how hard? These people don't take the time to read it.
Well, at least the summary.
I link it on the website. How hard is it to hit the click and read it? You can see it for yourself, but people don't take the time to do it.
Brian, I wonder if some of the lawmakers don't take your advice in that regard.
No, the lawmakers do. They do read the bills, but the problem is
not all of them.
They are voting when they're voting. A lot of times,
not federals.
The state lawmakers a lot of times have to vote on bills that they don't have in front of them because they haven't been typed up yet.
And yesterday, that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping they just decided to take a break.
part. Stephanie,
Tic-tac-toe.
Let's-
Then she said it's a winner.
let's run it.
Tic-tac-toe.
Let's run it down. What's going on in D.C.?
All right. Well, the House did vote to ban TikTok. Whether or not it goes anywhere in the Senate, not sure. TikTok's got a strong lobby going. They are trying mightily to convince our senators otherwise. And I don't honestly know where our senators are going to come down on that. Have they said publicly?
I haven't
yet?
heard, but it wasn't really a ban. It just divest with up to 19% ownership from the communists.
Well, talk about a way to turn away all young voters from the GOP.
Why is the GOP getting? It's just bipartisan.
I know, but like I'm already seeing on the internet.
Yeah. So you're saying young voters really aren't very careful in the way they digest and process information. Is that what you're admitting?
That's exactly what
well,
I'm saying.
that's a sad commentary. Maybe you should change that, young voter, Hannah.
Well, yeah.
Influencer.
Make a TikTok about it.
Yeah.
All right. At the same time, we're hearing from Biden that Biden is coming out of in opposition to plans to sell U.S. steel to a Japanese country. He's saying we need to keep our U.S. steel here and have strong, maintain a strong American steel company powered by American steel workers. So
Maybe if it didn't make it so costly to hire labor, it would stay here.
fair point. And
You need
also,
to get it for a steal of a deal.
Oh, wow. I tell you. Oh, my God.
y'all are on fire
It's a
today.
bright, shiny object there.
All right. At the same time, we are hearing from Mike Johnson that they will be putting forward some sort of support for Ukraine, but not the $95 billion that Biden had originally wanted. Whether or not we'll see something on the border, who knows?
I thought they were going to tie them together or else. It's not going to happen. I thought that was the hill they're dying on.
I
No?
was hopeful.
Yeah.
All right. Also, Trump is just threading the needle. He faces so many obstacles and is just dodging left and right. And then yesterday chalks up another win in that the judge down in the Georgia case dismissed, I think, 6 total counts, 3 of them against Trump. One in particular had to do with his phone conversation with the Secretary of State when he said, hey, I need to find
That one.
Yeah, they dismissed that
Need
one.
to find 10,000 votes in one of those. Yeah.
That
Wow.
was one of the counts that was dismissed, and essentially there wasn't basically enough facts, enough specificity as to these counts.
Can they refile?
Potentially, but I think how many counts were in the original? I mean, there were like
It was like 30
dozen. Yeah, a dozen.
It
So
was
3, but still, I mean, these little wins, he just keeps chipping away, and it just seems like it's crazy.
But that's separate from the big thing we await on Fani Willis, whether she's disqualified or not.
Yeah, when this decision came out yesterday, a lot of folks were hopeful that it was this, something to be said about disqualification. We are still expecting something on that this week, because the judge originally said 2 weeks, and I think Friday basically is 2 weeks.
Another bit of intrigue in that whole mess because, of course, that judge acquired a challenger during the final phases of the trial, right?
Sure did.
Woohoo! That changes it. He says, I'm not going to be politicized. That's what he says.
It's tough. That's tough. But I think, I mean, after the spectacle they put on in front of the whole world, it'd be tough. I mean, if it's appearance of impropriety or appearance of, funny business, I think they've clearly met that standard. And I think it'd be better for everyone if they just moved on.
It discredits the whole office.
That will have a very negative, a detrimental effect by having to reduce staff members, having to reduce teachers.
A furor, a storm over the pending TikTok disruption in D.C., but there's a local storm going on, and John Marsh, it's affecting power in Jefferson City. Let's talk about that before we come back and talk about a little more from Mr. Yearwood, who's got some problems here in Columbia with, I couldn't believe the interview. And we're going to cover that with Brian Hauswirth in just a second. John, what's going on power outage-wise?
Power outage in the west side of Jefferson City, pretty darn dark in many places, so watch it. Traffic lights presumably may be out. Light rain is what we're hearing right now, and supposed to see our weather watches out of the area by noon or so today before they could potentially be, redeveloped later in the day, but some pretty scattered power outages in the capital city. So
okay.
We're checking with law enforcement and the power companies, see just what their time frame is.
Would you play that sound again? Because Superintendent Yearwood was so fired up. I couldn't believe this. We came into the studio last night to do a little work. I saw Brian. He said, you won't believe what Superintendent Yearwood had to say. Listen again.
Yep.
I don't like it because, number one, it takes away from our public schools. It takes away finances. When we are losing close to $25 million that will come directly from our finances, that will have a very negative, a detrimental effect by having to reduce staff members, having to reduce teachers.
Brian Hauswirth, you have the story. It's up on the web on 93.9 The Eagle and on KWS.com.
Yeah, it's a story that obviously I was the only one there, the only reporter that goes to these normally these ready board meetings, and the most newsworthy things happen usually at the end of the meeting when they go around the room. And these are the top business leaders and elected officials in Columbia and Boone County. That's why I like to go.
For those who don't know, the READY board meeting is what? It's not READY, it's REDI.
Regional Economic Development Incorporated.
Okay,
and he spoke at the end of the meeting and said, folks, normally it's real short, but he goes, I got something. And he handed out pamphlets. Now, I don't know what was in the pamphlet because I didn't get one. But he said that the bill, he called him Speaker Rowden, by the way, and he meant Pro Tem Rowden. But he said the bill that passed the Senate, basically there were about three things he said. He said charter schools are basically they're not held to the same standards, that they're basically, they can pick and choose who they want, as opposed to public schools. They can, pick, they have to take everybody. He talked about students with special needs, etc. He also says that charter schools right now are going to lead to layoffs if it's CPS, if this bill were to go through. Talks about what happened in North Kansas City and in St. Louis. And he said the nature school could be at risk. I asked him about that. And then he basically said that one of the things that he feels like should happen if they're going to put pass this bill that we've talked about, which, by the way, this is just one component of the major education bill that passed. He feels like charter schools should be on the ballot in Columbia. And the way it reads, if you read Andrew Koenig's bill, this provision, it would allow charter schools not just in CPS, but all Boone County school districts. I didn't really hear any controversy at the meeting about the other districts, but it's CPS. But he was pretty fired up, and then I asked him to get audio with him afterwards, and he was more than happy to talk about it. I have never seen him that fired up. I have never seen Dr. Yearwood that fired up. And then literally moments after I tweeted it, Senator Caleb Rowden just went off on Dr. Yearwood's comments, as did Mary Elizabeth Coleman.
Yeah, I have Senator Rowden's tweet pulled up in front of me, and one of the things that he says is, quote, "You can support CPS and believe that Columbia needs more choices for parents and kids. Those beliefs do not have to be in conflict."
And I also loved Senator Coleman's tweet, who said, if choice leads to the school's demise, maybe Dr. Yearwood should make different decisions in his school district, saying, kids can go, it still allows folks to choose CPS and choose charter schools. But suddenly, if all parents are choosing the charter schools, then guess what? Maybe that means that your school's not doing a good job for parents.
I was going to say, it seems like a great opportunity for the public schools to step up their game, right? And work a little harder, maybe to try to entice parents to stay.
But like Susan Pendergast's point, when we had her on yesterday, she said, push comes to shove, some of these rural, smaller school districts and face the competition and go away. She kind of indicated that was just sort of the the price of doing business.
Yeah, it's really emotional. I mean, people are fired up on both sides. Stephanie, you've heard from people that want school choice in Ashland, as have I. In Ashland, really didn't get a lot of attention, but he is adamant that it will cause layoffs. Programs will have to be cut. And he didn't go into a lot of detail when I interviewed him.
Like DEI programs and CRT programs, those kind of programs, maybe closets so kids can try on transgender outfits.
One of the programs he cited was the nature school that I've profiled, that they work with the Missouri Department of Conservation. But I believe the funding at least is there for right now to do it. It's close to completion. But he is saying it's going to lead to layoffs. He says these charter schools come in, and they'll come in and recruit one or two kids, and then before you know it, he said they recruit. But his big message to the audience, this was about 75 to 100 of the most powerful business leaders in the area. Some clapped, some did not, many did, some did not, though. He urged everybody in that room to call their lawmakers. But and that's why I go to these things, because I knew something. I didn't know he was going to say that. I kind of expected was actually looking for something else on a completely different topic. But that's why I stayed until the end of the meeting, because that happened at the very end of the meeting. And we have very powerful audio. I also at the end got him to talk about Rockbridge playing in the state championship tournament.
Your tweet has like 20,000 views. I mean, it fired people up yesterday, and honestly, I can't believe he said that either.
Perhaps Mr. Yearwood should contemplate becoming the superintendent of a charter school. I'm sorry, if they do a great job and if he's all about the best education, then do that. And perhaps we need to return to a time. Public schools have a role. Mm-hmm. Perhaps public schools should be there to do something like Abraham Lincoln said, as I referenced in my Boone County Lincoln Days remarks. Basically, he said the government is there to do for the people what they cannot do or cannot do well for themselves. So if it's a struggle to take care of special needs children, perhaps that's the role of public schools. If private and semi-private charter schools do a better job, is Mr. Yearwood not wanting to have excellence in performance? Are his schools performing excellently at a cost of among the highest per pupil in the state? I'm sorry. I mean, let's face the music.
And I think some of his facts are wrong, because charter schools are public schools.
They are. They are.
Full stop. I know, I looked, years ago, I was thinking, maybe when I was looking to get into schools, I thought maybe I'm going to have to end up in Kansas City. I started researching, trying to figure out how I would get my kids into, because, if you get into certain districts in Kansas City, I couldn't afford to live in the really nice ones. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be in the public schools. Maybe I can do the charters. It's a lottery. Like, I can't pick to go to the
it's a lottery. Same in St. Louis.
Someone did ask me about your comments the other day. That was an epic rant you had the other day when you were talking about that. Did you really puree baby food and do cloth diapers?
Yes.
Holy cow! They were really impressed. They were really impressed by that.
I cooked my own, not for the third kid, for the first one.
That's a mama bear if I ever heard one. I'm telling you.
Brian, remember the debate at the Capitol when they were talking about okaying charter schools from Missouri, and the pro side was saying, well, hey, these will provide underprivileged kids with access to better education.
Yep.
And the opponents said charter schools support segregation. And that was a big, big debate in some of the hearings.
It was a big debate, and that got emotional. And race race, I can tell you, did not come up yesterday. But I thought you're right. I definitely remember that, and that was very emotional. Yearwood said in that soundbite Hannah just played, and that was after the meeting when I talked to him, he's talking about a $25 million hit. And he also said that charter schools will lead to the demise of public schools. He said that. He also said that in some cases they're failing. He says in some cases the people are lining their pockets. He said that. I took a lot of notes, and his basic message is call your legislators, but
they are public schools, though, and they operate off a contract. That's what the charter part of the verbiage means.
It's a public-private deal, right? I mean, it's a partnership in a way.
They are public, but they're not. It's not quite the same. It's a little complex to explain. John's right about that, but it's just what he's basically saying. If they come into Columbia, this is what he said. I'm paraphrasing because I don't have the exact quote. I have most of the quotes, but what he said is if charter schools came into CPS, they could say, well, we're not going to take kids from the north side or the east side. But as
Is
opposed
there any evidence that charter schools have done that? There's no evidence of that.
I'm just saying, I'm quoting what I've not seen, but
I
Randy,
know about the charter schools in St. Louis. There was a charter school for the performing arts that spawned hundreds, if not thousands, of dancers, musicians, theatrical people that did wonderful jobs locally and went on to travel internationally and nationally. And they were black and white and purple and green and gay and not gay and whatever. It didn't matter.
I am quoting what he said to the business leaders, and that is what he said. He said that.
That's dog whistling.
Deep breath, Randall. Deep breath.
So again, my approach on this, I report what he said. I report what the Republicans said. Our audience is smart enough; they can decide for themselves.
They are very smart,
but they are very fired up on that, and we'll have more audio with him, and they'll have the second story tomorrow, a little less controversial about Rockbridge High School.
We have a listener who texts, the community of Ashland and Hallsville have grown because of the decline of CPS over the last few decades. New math, lack of phonics have not been helpful these last 30 years, capitalized. Do the math. Educate the public of the truth. Dumbing down is real.
In Ashland's school district just continues to grow and grow. They're going to have a bond issue on the ballot. We appreciate the thoughts on that. Just got an updated number. I've also got an eye on the Ameren outage map. We now have 9 outages in the Jeff City, Cole County area. 2,100 people out now without power in Jeff City and also Cole County. Columbia, no outages, but again on the weather. So we've got all these different things going on. We could have another round this afternoon, and quite frankly, the one in the afternoon I'm more concerned about than the one this morning.
John, it reminds me of our youth before election. Men are men, women are women. And once again, am I crazy, or do you think? Well, I am crazy, but do you think that Sarah Huckabee Sanders should be on the short list for Donald Trump's VP choice?
Yes.
I love her.
I love her too. John, do you love her?
She does a good job.
John won't say he loves her, but she does a good job. I don't love her in a romantic kind of a way, but in a sort of an agape kind of a way, right? I mean, she's very, very compelling, and she's so, like her dad, forthright, so plain-spoken, so effective. And, of course, she was an excellent, excellent spokeswoman for the president, for Trump. So she says Arkansas will no longer permit residents to identify as X rather than male or female on state-issued driver's license. Department of Finance and Administration said it would rescind rules that allow license holders to change their gender without any verifiable information or to use X in lieu of gender. So policy is just common sense, she said. Only women give birth. Men shouldn't play women's sports, and there are only two genders. As long as I'm governor, Arkansas state government will not endorse nonsense. Good for you, Sarah. Good for you.
That is, if she doesn't become the vice president.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with that pick. I think about, it's like I ruminate over that all the time. There's so many good choices out there, and it's so pivotally important this cycle. This is a big deal this time. You don't think it's a big deal?
No, I think
it's a big deal every time.
I think it's a big deal, but you just said, like, there's so many good choices out there, and I think you're right. At the same time, I think the general consensus about the president is, like, we have so many people in America, and these are our two guys.
Well, that's true.
Yes.
Well, but that's the point. Everyone's, I think, looking beyond them and what comes next. I mean, Kamala versus anyone else on the even long list for Donald Trump pales in comparison, right? That's the great thing.
That's not saying a whole lot. It's really not.
Well, and it can be really important because, again, with the age, there is a serious risk that the vice president becomes the president.
You're right.
And I don't think we're typically in that situation.
Yeah.
Well, you're talking about the two long shot guys out there that have been mentioned by RFK Jr. being
Oh my God.
Aaron Rodgers and Jesse the Mind Ventura. How about them for president?
I saw a tweet yesterday that said if Aaron Rodgers, was somehow elected as vice president, he would give his first speech and then get injured for the next 4 years.
That's very good. There would also be no federally banned substances on the drug list anymore either.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. Of course, I think the timing of the announcement will be interesting. My guess is that he's had, as you said in the DC rundown, he's on a winning streak, Donald Trump, right? I mean, he just got 3 of the charges that apply to him dismissed, and I think a few others to the others. But yesterday from the Judge McAfee. But I think he'll wait until when he is on a losing streak, right? When he's struck out 3 times in a row.
When he needs some positive
and he
press.
needs right. And
Yep.
I think he will let it go then, and I think that will really re-energize the campaign. Which I'm reading, and I haven't confirmed this, but I'm reading
Oh boy.
and hearing
boy.
that the attendees at his rallies are the attendance is down a little bit. And I don't know whether that's true or not, but I heard that the other day.
I thought you were going to be jazzed because I was also reading this week that apparently like 50 to 60 people got fired at the RNC, and you've been really hot about all the spending and everything else at the RNC, and I thought maybe are you happy to hear that they're cleaning house and maybe getting some new people in there? But what if they just all bring in all Trump loyalists?
I'm probably going to ruffle a lot of feathers for people listening out there. I think one of the big mistakes that we make in our political campaigns is to have too many consultants. Too many consultants, too many advisors, too many. I think politicians naturally.
Don't say too many lawyers.
Naturally, I said consultants, but I
like rent having increased. Many prices are well off their highs. Gasoline, eggs, other things, TVs, used cars and trucks that people buy are well off their highs. And look, as I said, President Biden knows that high costs are a burden to many American households, and it's his number one priority to do what he can to lower costs.
Well, that's Janet Yellen, totally out of touch with you and me and everyday Americans who are looking at the unbelievable escalation in costs. Welcome back into Wake Up Mid-Missouri. I'm telling you guys, this is I'm seeing people at the checkout line. I don't go shopping that often, but in 2 out of the last 4 trips that I was at the checkout, Helene asked me to pick up something on the way home, and it's funny, just people randomly start talking about the cost of thing. Am I the only one? It's happened to me. It's like I make a comment under my breath to myself. It's like, man, I can't believe what it costs. And the person next door doing their own self-checkout goes, yeah, you're telling me. And they usually have 2 or 3 kids in tow, and they're like, you can tell they're struggling. It's bad. And they try to paint this, well, inflation's moderating. And that I think they're hoping that people are processing that as prices are down. Not going to happen.
Or maybe like you're just used to it by now. I mean, I think it was shocking the first couple times, when I, because we kind of get in a routine, and I kind of just know, like, every week this is kind of my normal grocery trip, and that's been disrupted now for 18 months, and what I used to be able to get for $100 is now $150. So I'm adjusting my expectations to try, and my list to try to stay in that weekly number, and I think people are just used to having to try to do with less.
Every single time I leave the grocery store, especially on those trips where you're just going to pick up a few things and it's still, $100, you're carrying out like your 2, maybe 3 bags of groceries going, where? Like checking the receipt to make sure, something didn't scan up wrong.
Didn't leave a bag behind.
Yeah, and it's disheartening. It really is.
Well, look at Randy. Yeah, Randy, when you and I talked the other day, you were talking about driving the big A truck and filling up with diesel now at almost $4 a gallon.
And it's real pricey when you fill it up with the wrong kind.
Okay, yeah, that DEF costs a lot more per gallon, doesn't it? Okay, but here's the deal. Okay, so we were talking about, I do feel so much compassion for your generation, Hannah. I mean, I was looking at this story the other day, and we talked a little about it in the context of the buy now, pay later. Contact lenses up 465%. Lighter fluid, laptop parts up 300%. Garbage bags, 182%. First aid and antiseptics. And now these are not things that you're going to use every day, but they're things that people will need, and they're essentials. Okay, there's other essentials, and it's amazing.
Yeah, speaking of things that people need, the Wall Street Journal had it and said people are just in disbelief about how expensive things are. And for a guy that they talked to named Rob, it was his Old Spice Stronger Swagger deodorant that he's used to paying. This is the lead, that he's used to paying $4 that now is $7.99.
Yeah.
And you need deodorant.
Yeah.
He just says, I'll just stink.
No, let's repeat that again. You need deodorant. We're entering that time of year where if you're not wearing it, everyone around you knows.
But that begs the question. In the recent survey that was cited this morning, I heard it on a news report. Are you in a better place economically, same or worse? 15% of people said, compared to the last year or year before, 15% of people said they're worse off. 45% of people said they're even Steven, and 40% of people said that they're better off, or that they're a little better off. So it seems as though, where is that 40% of people? Because they're not the people I know.
Yeah, no kidding.
I don't understand it.
Sure hear a lot more people say they're worse off than 15% indicates.
Yeah, maybe I heard it wrong, but those are the numbers that I got. So and you would think this is, we just saw come across the Fox News feed, 58% of people put that as their top priority in the upcoming election. Okay, but not far behind borders and abortion, coming from a different ranks. It's I've never seen such a mix of topics that are all so important, but yet sort of divide, not necessarily along political lines, especially the abortion issue. That's not so much a Democrat-Republican issue.
Yeah, and I think Kamala is giving. I think she's visiting an abortion clinic today and going to give a speech later. So I'm sure we will be hearing about that. But it's tough, and I think the economy. I think people are just feeling kind of beat down, right, and just resigned to the fact that this is just the way things are now. And I think that that type of feeling of just this is how things are certainly helps the Democrats because you don't really have as much sticker shock anymore. You're just like, yep, that's. I'm not surprised I'm paying, $5 for eggs or $7 for bacon or $8 for deodorant. It just is what it is.
Let's not forget my cotton candy grapes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But the big question is, the consumer spending. You mentioned it yesterday, Stephanie. I mean, consumer spending is still in January was up.
Well, and I think it's going to take a little bit of time for the business side to catch up with consumer spending because I think people really are changing their behavior somewhat. And I know I am in my own life, and I think, but I think it takes a while. So consumers start pulling back a little bit. Businesses start feeling the squeeze from consumers pulling back a little bit. Then, maybe they lay people off. Maybe they raise their prices even more. I mean, it takes a little bit of time for some of these things to really reflect. But you're right. In December, what people knew, the data show that we were still shopping like crazy. And I think what we know is a lot of people are putting that on credit cards. They're spending their savings. But that runs out. There's a max to that. And I think people were spending like crazy. And I think we all kind of get there, right? Like where the world sucks, COVID sucks, and you're like, I can buy some things and give my kids a
pent up demand.
But that runs out, and I think unless we can turn the economy around and do it pretty quickly, I worry that it's going to all come to a head, and we're going to really feel the squeeze.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I don't think that this economy has escaped a recession yet. I mean, even when we talk to conservative experts, they're like, well, we may come to a soft landing. I'm not so certain. I think this may be like a spring-loaded potato gun. You got to cock that spring, and when it happens, watch out, baby. It's going to fly a long way. And I mean the economy right down to the bottom.
Yeah, I don't want to be like a Debbie Downer, I guess, but I think there's truth in what you're saying, Randy, and then and we've mentioned it here too. What's the average home price here in Columbia? It's like $400,000. I know in Ashland it's similar, and so for those people like Hannah, first time home buyer folks who are feeling the squeeze at the grocery store and then also trying to save for, I mean that's a difference maker. There was absolutely no way, even on a lawyer's salary, still paying back student loans as a young person, that I would have been able to make the payment on a $400,000 house. It would not be possible.
Yeah, I know. I know your early 20s are supposed to kind of suck a little bit, but it feels like it's just kind of bleak right now. I don't know.
But what is the consensus on who might have at least a new or better or worthy of trying policy position on economic improvement, Hannah? What are you hearing among your peers on and off social media? Do they put any hope that anyone, or are they looking for absolutely break it all apart and RFK? I mean, what are they thinking?
I don't know if I've seen a whole lot of solutions thrown around, to be honest. The internet's really good for complainers. I'm guilty of it myself. But it's easier to complain than sit around and come up with solutions, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I think it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. Well, let's go through some of the text here. By the way, another thing that's affecting, I think, many of you, and you may not know this, but if you are doing gig work, and some of you are maybe as a second job, are you driving an Uber? You driving a Lyft? You doing a little
consulting on the side?
Consulting? Yeah. There's a rule that's gone in that could really, really present a hardship for you, and that is the new Labor Department rule that actually just went into effect. And we're going to be talking with a entrepreneur, a small businesswoman who was actually driven out of California because of the California version of this law. Well, now it's national regulations, and I think you may be very, very, very concerned. That'll be at 8:10. We'll be talking with her. She wrote a nice piece on The Hill recently, and she's with Independent Women's Forum. We talk with them every couple of weeks here on the program. Okay, here's a text from Gary. Says, you got me and my wife moved to another community just to get our kids out of Columbia Public Schools, in case you're just joining us. And we'll reprise this again at 7:35 because I want to go over this story again with Superintendent Yearwood. I mean, Brian Hauswirth interviewed him yesterday, and he is fired up. And he made a big political statement about charter schools and how they're going to destroy CPS. And we're going to hit that again. But text after text say it's CPS.
There's no love lost for Dr. Yearwood.
I mean, it's like, oh, wow.
Or for CPS. And I think, I mean, it was one of the most difficult things, and I think one of the some of the most impassioned phone calls and discussions we've had here, during COVID. CPS did not have good performance. They haven't come out even since then. They've had some major snafus. And so to say that, we don't want any competition and we're the only one with, a community of people who know that they haven't been, performing like parents had wanted. And if parents were given a choice, many parents would have picked something different. Certainly, I'm not surprised that Dr. Yearwood feels backed up against the wall and doesn't want competition, because I think he knows I think he knows the answer, that if parents had a choice, they would have been picking something else.
Well, here's a very compelling one, because I'm careful, because my dad taught in public school, large school district in St. Louis, Lindbergh School District. Many of you may have heard of it. It was one of the largest in the state at that time.
My nephews went to Lindbergh.
Great district.
Great school district.
Helene and I graduated there. Our kids, well, one of them graduated from there, the other two from up northeast. But I was always concerned because Dad said, we get a lot of griping about what's wrong with the schools, but usually it was about an individual kid. And when you looked into the fact that it often revolved around parental expectations and reinforcement of what the school was doing. And when that fails, it's hard to blame the school, right? The school is not going to be your mom and dad and aunt and uncle. And, now it's your cafeteria and it's your icebox and your refrigerator, lunches, dinners, suppers, snacks, whatever. How many years by personal experience as an example? My oldest daughter had attended Sturgeon through 10th grade, says a listener. Circumstances beyond control led to enrollment in Rockbridge, 11th and 12th grade year. When we started that year, it was only required to take 2 classes. Everything else was elective. 12th grade year was all elective. She was able to be out of school half the day. This just shows how the small school actually teaches the children versus the Columbia behemoth that we have become.
Well, and I think, some of Dr. Yearwood's comments also are frustrating, because I think you're painted into a picture, too, that if you support school choice or you support charter schools, that suddenly you're anti-public school. And I mean, so it would open up charter schools for all of Boone County. I would pick Southern Boone. Yeah. I would pick, because they're doing a good job.
There you go.
And I think that's the point, is if you're doing a good job, and they're doing a good job for my kids. Now, they might be doing a good job and my kid might not be a good fit, and I still might want to choose something else, but I'm not anti-public school.
No,
I
me
would
neither.
Pick Southern Boone again and again and again.
Absolutely. It's important that we have some element of public education available for those who choose to do that if they perform well. But to continue to fund the indefensible performance in many of the schools, including CPS, we've got to rethink that. Well, it's time we step aside and make a wide berth for Hot with Hannah, because I'm sure it's going to be Stanley Cups.
Wide load coming through.
No. Stanley Cups. What else you have? You've got a huge pile of prep for your Hot with Hannah, right? that give us some laughter and some frivolity among all the pain. What's hot with Hannah?
You know, John and I have joked in the past that when we talk about AI, our brains don't necessarily go to artificial intelligence.
I know. You
Right?
too?
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
The big shoulder-high glove comes into play.
yes.
That's funny. I
So-
thought I was alone in that.
I found an AI story, and
Okay.
I was pleased, I guess, to see that my head was in the correct place this time. An 80-year-old Montana man has been busted and arrested for a decade-long endeavor into captive sheep breeding. This guy owns one of those guided hunts
Yeah.
that you can sign up and go on, and like trophy hunting kind of. This guy, I guess, for the last 10 years has been traveling the world and has been somehow getting semen from other sheep species around the world
Okay.
that are very large. Some of the species are protected or even endangered, so that's where the no-no comes in. But he's somehow smuggling semen back to Montana, and he's had this 10-year-long research project of trying to breed, the biggest, nastiest, burliest sheep that he can.
The super ram.
Yes, so
Wow.
that folks who come do his guided hunting trip, get the biggest
They don't get the
ram.
half ton. They get the 1 ton ram.
Right.
Yeah.
So, that's frowned upon. He's facing
Unless you're a truck dealer.
he's facing multiple felony charges and a fine of up to $250,000, and he's scheduled to be sentenced this July. Again, he's 80 years old.
Yeah. So that's the kind of thing. Yeah, I guess you could put a few straws in your suitcase and not tell anyone. And I mean, how are they going to how are the custom and borders going to pick that up?
But you have to have temperature controlled.
Well, that's true. Well,
so to speak.
but that's supposed to be frozen, isn't it?
Yeah, it's supposed to freeze it like a nitrogen.
You can't be bringing
and all
a
that.
liquid nitrogen tank with you through there.
Yeah, I don't know how you get away with something like this for 10 years.
Holy
Just keeps it in his pocket,
Oh,
okay.
man, I'm telling you.
Well,
Is that a RAM AI in your pocket, or there's a joke there somewhere? I'll have to work on that. I'll have to
Man.
work on that.
homeland if it wants to keep its US customers. TikTok's owners have repeatedly rejected that it poses any national security threat, a Chinese government spokesman saying the US is guilty of bullying behavior and an attempt to suppress superior foreign companies.
In one corner, TikTok parroting the freedom of speech argument, and in the other corner, those in Congress, specifically the House, saying, no, it's a national security threat, and it's poisoning the minds of Americans. The TikTok debate goes on, but before we get to that, Hannah, some news on the roadways. We have a problem with the traffic light.
Yeah, we're getting reports that the traffic lights at Old 63 and Stadium are flashing red. Traffic is backed up quite a ways. Of course, when the lights are flashing red, the intersection is supposed to turn into a four-way stop. So if you're going to be passing through that area, just a little heads up.
And power outage still ongoing in Jefferson City, John Marsh?
Yeah, we've checked in with Ameren. They're showing 5 outages now in Jefferson City and Cole County, still about 1,300 customers out. Couple small outages around the Herman area. Three Rivers Electric also reporting on the Owensville area. About 350 people out. No word on when they will get things back up and running, but hopefully sooner than later.
And more storms coming throughout the day. It's going to be running through the area, right, Brian Hauswirth?
Yes. Yes, we're looking at 2 rounds. I'm about to put an updated map on KWS.com and 939theeagle.com, an updated graphic. We're looking at 2 rounds. Now, the first one is through 12:10 this afternoon, and that one is going to be more of a nuisance, like Hannah just mentioned, the lights being out at 63, and the scanner's going crazy on that. Traffic is really backed up right now, so just be patient. Be patient. The one in the afternoon, you folks need to be much more concerned about. This one potentially could bring tornadoes, potentially. It all depends on the atmosphere, damaging winds, large hail. Ballpark figure, we're looking at about 2 to 3 in the afternoon for that one. We are now, by the way, up to 10 power outages in the Cole County area, up to 1,300 people without power. And then they also have another bunch of outages as well in the St. Louis area from that storm that moved through here about 5 o'clock. So keep your radio tuned to 93.9 The Eagle, KWS as well, for updated information. But we're looking at 2 storms. Yeah. Second one would be no watches right now, but I talked to Matt Beitcher at the National Weather Service. The one this afternoon we need to be really concerned about.
Potentially some hails. Yeah.
We're also getting reports from a listener that's saying the power poles along 63, just as you're leaving Jefferson City, there's some that have snapped.
Oops.
So that could potentially be a cause of one of these power outages.
Yeah,
maybe.
I wonder. Yeah, you got to wonder. And
that they have jurisdiction on that, so that wouldn't be surprising. Although Three Rivers also is close to that area, but I believe those poles, John, are the jurisdiction of Ameren, if I'm not mistaken, based on what she's describing.
And John, an exciting championship game pending today, right, with the Jays?
Yeah, Jefferson City Jays playing for a state basketball title. They beat Vianney last night to advance 63-59. First title game in basketball for the Jaybirds in over 30 years. And they take on DeSmet, Kevin Kelly, and the whole crew. Play-by-play on KWS 5:45 this afternoon.
That'll be exciting.
Monty Harge was on that last team that was at Jefferson City. That was
large, Monty Harge.
Yes, Monty Harge from Jeff City. If people did not get a chance to listen to Kevin Kelly, David Fox, and Steve Duncan yesterday on KWS, and I actually heard him as I was coming out of the Ready meeting, and then I had to go to a trial and heard it as well.
They weren't wound up, were they?
They were really fired up. And actually, Misha was so impressed with their broadcast. Misha did a podcast with them right after their game. Kevin's a Hall of Famer. That was a really darn good broadcast. And DeSmet will not be easy. That's where Steve Stepanovich played his high school ball. Really, really good player.
Good old Steepo.
Yep.
All right. Everyone can't listen to the program for the whole program. But for those of you who are just joining us, I want to invite you to delve into the stories on 93.9 The Eagle, KWAS.com, about the CPS, school superintendent, Mr. Yearwood, and how he came, essentially, it sounds like unglued, unhinged at the end of the Ready meeting yesterday. We have a little sound from your interview with him.
Yep.
I don't like it because, number one, it takes away from our public schools. It takes away finances. When we are losing close to $25 million that will come directly from our finances, that will have a very negative, a detrimental effect by having to reduce staff members, having to reduce teachers.
I wanted to cover that because it's so darn important to people.
Huge. You should see my Twitter feed.
Right.
It's
on the one hand,
my Twitter feed is melting over his comments to me. And literally, it is.
I follow Brian on Twitter, obviously, and I didn't see it from his account first. I saw it first from Senator Caleb Rowden's account because he had retweeted it with some comments.
Yeah.
He quote tweeted me exactly.
So, I mean, just to bring it up that, this was on the heels of the House, of this deal about the bill and saying basically it went from 8 pages to 32 pages to 76 pages to 153 pages, right?
Yes.
And the Senate, I should say.
The Senate.
And it throws some bones to his institution, right?
Yeah.
It changes the foundation formula to counting enrolled students, not attendance, which is a big deal because attendance is a problem there. I've heard him say that.
He's confirmed
it wasn't
that.
all just about the charter. There were some pro-public school things in there, too, that got negotiated in.
There are, and Doug Beck got a couple of things he wanted. There's about 150 pages, and after 9 o'clock, I'm going to post an updated story at 93.9 The Eagle. I've got my hands full with the storm right now, but KWS.com, I'll link to the bill again. But I want to tell you just a couple things about that. They have 4-day weeks in there. There's stuff in there about the empowerment scholarship program, things like that. But the specific component that Dr. Yearwood was upset about and is upset about is the bill the part that would allow the charter schools, not just at CPS, but the rest of the Boone County school districts, Ashland would be included. And he brought it up at the end of the meeting. I would not say he became unhinged. He was on fire, though. He was really, really fired up. I have never seen him that fired up. I wouldn't say he's angry, but he was very passionate. And he urged everybody in the room. These were, you're talking about the most powerful people in business in this area. And there were some people in the room as well. I was in the room covering it. I was the only reporter there. But basically wants them to call their lawmakers. And he said it at the meeting, and then I got him on tape afterwards. He reiterated what he said at the meeting. He said if this bill passes, he's going to have to lay off staff. They're going to take a $25 million hit. He said that they are going to these charter schools will lead to the demise of public schools. That's what's really that comment. I'm getting a lot pro and con on that on my Twitter feed. And then he also said, and I pinned him down on this, he said that the Boone County Nature School kind of could be at risk if this goes through. Now, Caleb Rowden and Marysworth Coleman are saying absolutely not. This is not the case. They basically they're chastising him for what he told me.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Maybe Mr. Yearwood's listening and he could call in 573-874-93.
He's listening. I can guarantee it. I guarantee you he's listening.
I have a biology degree from the University of Missouri, St. Louis. I grew up in South County in St. Louis. There were some creeks behind our home, but it was not a rural area. It was not a nature preserve. I came to love biology because I remember taking field trips. We didn't have a formal nature school. And this is not to disparage what's going on. Have we gotten too ambitious with programmatic development and, the cost that accrues to these things? Why can't a non-union school teacher, unencumbered by too many rules and regulations, and some of this is out of Mr. Yearwood's controls, I admit, why can't a teacher who loves learning and is curious, why can't that just by osmosis, as it did in my generation? John and Brian, you probably know what I'm talking about. They inspired curiosity. They inspired learning. We went out to a farm that someone knew, for a farmer, and we learned about wild grasses, and we did leaf collections. I just wonder, we talk about funding. Maybe we need to just fund the loving of knowledge by taking away some of the regulations and the expectations and the programs that cost a lot of money.
Well, let me be fair here.
I'm just a simple guy.
I want to be fair to Dr. Yearwood, and I've tried to be fair. I'm just reporting what he has said, and I'm certainly reporting what Senator Rowden says on the nature school. It's not just CPS. This is a nature school that, and I've reported on this extensively, it's a partnership between Columbia Public Schools, all 6 Boone County school districts. Ashland's involved in it as well. Southern Boone, I should say, but I mean Ashland, and the Missouri Department of Conservation.
It's a wonderful program. I'm not saying it isn't, but times are tough.
It's off by Tom Bass Road, by the way. It's still being built. Boone County did receive federal ARPA money, and they did. I was out there when they did it at Three Creeks Conservation Area. But what I don't want people to think is that it's just Yearwood and CPS building this nature school, because it's not.
No, and I have a friend who I think is involved in that, and this is not to disparage it, but does the school district have? Is that their charter? Is that their mission? Is that or is their mission to make sure that children are well prepared for success in life? They're not doing well, according to college professors. They're coming in and needing remedial training. They're not doing well in the vocations. We talked about Stevens College now having to do it. They're doing a vocation. I just think that we need to refocus, and maybe not demise is the word that should be used, but right-sized. Our schools perhaps should be right-sized.
Well, when I went out there, I'm looking at my story, it was in October when I did the last story on the nature school, and Sarah Parker Pauley was there. And I did ask him about the funding and everything. And Boone County contributed, Kip Kendrick and I talked, Boone County, to be clear here, did contribute $400,000. That'd be the county of Boone to that. But Dr. Yearwood would argue, when I asked him about this, that they've had hundreds and hundreds, probably more than that have students that have been out there on field trips. They have not had one student who has been written up for some disciplinary item or anything like that. He said that this nature school is and will inspire learning, and it's not just the Columbia Public Schools. We're talking about a small part of the CPS budget.
So why are we using that as a cudgel to talk about charter schools?
Because he's saying that could be in jeopardy.
Because people love the nature school, and he has to point to something like this. You're going to risk this. Yeah. But I think, he almost makes the point for charter schools in that there's a lot more flexibility. That's one of the benefits of charter schools. And Randy, you are kind of talking about let's inspire teachers to inspire learning and give them the flexibility to do what they love, and to make sure that they have the flexibility to actually teach things and in a way that makes sense for our current world.
Yes.
Well, and I went to, we get a little bit of this at Southern, we get a lot of good things at Southern Boone, a little bit through the Wings program, which is the gifted program, and they've got a little bit more flexibility on curriculum and stuff. And the other night I got to go, the kids got to do their own project. They picked their own topic, and I forget exactly what the acronym was. And they gave PowerPoint presentations to a room full of parents. Now, these are 12-year-olds. There were probably 50 people in this room. I thought, you could have never gotten me up there in a million years at 12 years old. But I learned they did stuff on crocheting, on Rubik's Cubes, on the Cold War, on, all sorts of different topics. It's something that they were interested in, and teaching public speaking and presenting. And then on a topic that they were interested in, it's that flexibility and they all just excelled. They did wonderfully.
And that blends several skills into one task, right? There's processing skills, there's literacy skills, there's a lot of
Sure, Peter Frusetta told his colleagues, I've seen thousands and thousands of heifers, and probably 3, maybe 4 had a hormonal imbalance that makes them shy away from the bulls and take up with other heifers. He says it's rare and it's a very unnatural thing. Frusetta's side won their debate. And a Helena, Montana sheep researcher said her work revealed that about 10% of rams are homosexual and that such sexual orientation appears to be linked to brain structures that regulate hormones. No word on how they carried any of the evidence into the assembly chamber, though. So now you know the rest of that story, or maybe a little too much.
I think that's some bad science.
And John and I did not coordinate on our sheep story.
I wondered if you guys had a little coordination there.
You never know. There's always a little collusion in the backgrounds.
Well, we're not supposed to tell people that, though, John.
I asked Hannah, how do you come up with these stories? I haven't asked you, John, but I asked Hannah, how do you come up with these stories? She said, if I told you, I'd have to kill you. So she won't share those. She won't share her resources with me, but I guess that's journalistic privilege, right?
That's
I guess
called
you can
show prep.
Randy, you wouldn't know what they were anyways.
So, Hannah, there's a weather update. There's some imminent weather coming this direction.
Yeah, as you might have heard when the National Weather Service so rudely interrupted our show just a few minutes ago, we are under a severe thunderstorm warning until 8:30 this morning. They spotted the storm over Clarksburg, and they're saying it has some pretty strong wind and hail. So be on the lookout. It's supposed to be hitting the Columbia-Ashland area pretty much any minute. So especially if you're driving on 63 right now, just heads up, be careful.
It's eerie
Got
out
a good
there.
report from Mr. Bell, too, didn't we?
Oh, yeah. He drove right by the power line outage thing, and he said there are 3 snap power line poles along the sod farm and 5 or 6 that are tilted. He said he counted 6 Ameren trucks on site.
That's just north of Jefferson City in the 63 river bottom there.
Looking out the window here on Lamone Industrial in Columbia, it's very dark and it's very still,
Really eerie.
which is not a great sign.
Very eerie. It's so quiet, and you can see
don't say the Q word.
What's wrong with that?
The Q word is
You're gonna
bad.
jinx us.
Yeah.
Oh, guys, you're not superstitious. doesn't turn
We're getting reports from staffers here talking to their folks hailing in California, Missouri right now, tracking right down Highway 50.
Well, it's hailing regulations on a large swath of American gig workers. Those are independent contractors, small business people, entrepreneurs. One of them, who was affected in a smaller jurisdiction in California, but now is trumpeting the problem with the new labor regulations, is Jennifer Oliver O'Connell. She's a visiting fellow with one of my favorite groups in the whole world, Independent Women's Forum. Welcome to the program, Jennifer.
Thank you so much for having me, Randy. How are you doing this morning?
Well, I'm troubled because this has been something that's been under the radar, and I don't think how many people listening to you in mid-Missouri realize how, whether they're an occasional worker getting a 1099, whether they're a small business person, it's going to throw a real wrench into the works, isn't it? New regulations.
Oh, it definitely is. From your dog walker to your ER doctor, to your manicurist, to even your urban planner, the people who are fixing your house, your construction worker. It's going to affect everybody because so many of those people are independent contractors. They do work that involves several projects, different people, and it's not only inconvenient for them to be tied to one employer. They prefer not to being tied to one employer. They like doing what they do. They make a whole lot more money doing what they do. And this rule basically says you really can't do that anymore. We unless you meet certain criteria, and the criteria is very vague and very porous, then you're not going to be able to be an independent contractor anymore.
Now, and California previously adopted a similar rule, and you were personally affected. Your story is really fascinating. Can you tell us more about that?
Certainly. Lived in California for 35 years of my life, was a writer, reinvention coach, high-level yoga instructor, did my own workshops, and all of that was 1099, contracted with other yoga studios, as well as contracted with other writing partners. And AB 5, Assembly Bill 5, was passed under, the cloak and dagger. People protested against it, but the unions wanted this, and it was passed, and it basically eliminated 1099 within California for everybody. Writers were affected, filmmakers were affected. So many people were just cut off at the knees, and kind of like what you said, they knew nothing about it. They thought, oh, this won't affect me, and it did affect them. Certain people were able to get exemptions, like the ER doctors, but the nurse practitioners were not. So the people with high-level lobbying power got exemptions. The rest of us were just left holding the bag. Go ahead.
So, Jennifer, what are the particular requirements that now, where is the bar now that has to be met for someone to be qualified and classified as a 1099 worker?
Under the rule or under AB 5?
Under the rule, the rule, the federal rule.
Again, the federal rule is very vague. They take what in AB 5, which is what eliminated people, and put it into the language of the DOL rule. They claim the ABC test is there, but the language is pretty much the same. The biggest thing that trips up most of the independent contractors is that you cannot contract with a company that does similar work as you. So basically, if I'm a lawyer, I cannot hire a 1099 paralegal.
Or a yoga instructor with yoga studios.
You got it. I cannot contract with another yoga studio. Well, publishing and writing. If I'm a writer,
sure,
I can't be with a publisher. It's crazy.
Okay, well, once in a while, I have to go and get my hair cut because I don't have much hair. So that's not very frequently, Jennifer. But when I do, I go and I know a lot of the arrangements that hair cutters have, barbers and hairdressers have, and beauticians. They have almost like a mall arrangement where they rent a studio for a little bit, or maybe they're a 1099 subcontractor. Are they going to be affected potentially?
Yeah. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. It's no longer a lot of them that I know. They actually rent a chair in a studio or several studios or trade shows. People don't think about musicians got hammered with AB5 because they do gigs all over the place.
Yeah.
And that just totally destroys them because they have to become an employee of the venue where they're going to play for one night. And it's the same thing with hairdressers and hairstylists. They do chairs and situations in different areas, collect a 1099, and they get most of their pay, and they just pay for the booth rental. You're not going to be able to do that under this new rule.
Well, I paid my way through med school being a musician, doing exactly what you said. It was at a country club one night and a lounge the next night, you know. And
Yep.
But now this not only puts a real burden on the employee, but the employer is now tremendously burdened with accounting and legal hazards and costs associated, right?
Exactly. The backbone of America is small business, and they work on very tight margins. So to have to pay a lawyer or an accountant or a labor expert to figure out, well, am I going to be in compliance with this or not going to be in compliance with this? So it's going to have a chilling effect. It's going to basically let them say, you know what, we're going to have to let some of these contractors go, or we're not going to be able to advance this product that we were planning on launching to the market because we don't have the startup cost, and these 1099 people, we can't have them.
My goodness.
It's just going to have a domino effect.
And is there evidence that this disproportionately affects women or young mothers? Because I know in my own businesses, when I have independently contracted with folks, a lot of times it has been, you know, women who want to work part-time, women who have small children at home and they can help me out, you know, on their computer from home or whatever. It seems like it would completely eliminate that type of work.
It very much would, and it's one of the reasons why I am with Independent Women's Forum and talking about this is that it's disproportionately affecting women. Probably about half, if not more, of the independent contractors out there are women. We, found it during the pandemic. Some of us, like me, have been doing it for decades, and it offers us the flexibility to take care of family, to take care of sick loved ones, to raise children and not have to depend on a babysitter. It gives us the flexibility to be who we are and still be wives and mothers and caregivers. And this rule would totally eliminate that, force us into 9-to-5 jobs and paying the government for child care.
And I think it also probably encourages the growth of unions, right? I mean, this is largely a leftist kind of an argument, right? Let's get people into W-9, W-2 jobs, and then then we can have a union shop vote, and there you go, more union voters, more money into the coffers of one particular party, and then more consolidation.
That's really the goal here, because the unions have been waning since the Janus Supreme Court ruling in 2017, 2018, and they're still waning. Nobody wants to join union membership. They're not interested because not everybody wants to be, quote unquote, protected. That's the word that they use, is we are offering you protections against so many things when we don't need protection. We're pretty much doing what we do. We're earning what we want to earn, not some union wage that's going to limit us. And we pay for our own insurance. We are not being misclassified or taken advantage of. But that's the way they want to paint it, that these people are being taken advantage of and we must protect you, even though there are misclassification laws and protections already on the books for that factor of people who may be being exploited.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I was running a hospital, we always had to go through that checklist. Is this person to be classified as a 1099 or as a W-2? And sometimes there were gray areas. We had to consult, someone as to get some advice on that. And so I remembered addressing this, but now I think this takes it to a different level. We're talking with Jennifer Oliver O'Connell. She's a visiting fellow with Independent Women's Forum. I love the name of your enterprise, As the Girl Turns. I love that.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. Okay, so a couple more things. We talked about women and how they will be disproportionately impacted. What about seniors? I'm thinking of maybe a grandma who goes in and works now and then at a daycare center. Now she'll have to be an employee rather than a 1099 occasional gig worker?
Yeah. I may sound like a 20-year-old, but I am headed in that senior direction myself. And coming from California, ageism is a thing.
Oh.
You know, but you look over 30, you're gone.
Yeah.
And they can find ways of getting rid of you. So people who don't want to be affected by that ageism thing also have a wealth of experience that they want to pour in a certain direction, which many seniors do without having to work full time, without having to compromise their Social Security. They're able to do that as a 1099, as an independent contractor. But with this rule, you're basically going to get rid of people's extra retirement income, forcing them to only depend on Social Security, or for those who barely got Social Security because they didn't choose to pay into it. There are some people who don't. And this was their retirement desire to work this thing, to drive Uber, to drive Lyft, to, as you said, work at a daycare center. And that daycare is not going to be able to hire them on, or maybe not even want to hire them on because of their age.
Yeah.
Because of the cost of a senior, insuring a senior.
Yeah.
They're going to want to get rid of that.
Oh man. Okay. Well, given that this is going to just really wreak havoc with the whole situation with employees and employers here and gig workers, and really, I think, have a real negative impact on our economy at a time when the economy needs to grow. Is there a movement in Congress to try to rectify this and somehow bring some sensibility into this?
Yes, we are very thankful for Representative Kevin Kiley of California, 3rd District in California. He was an assemblyman when AB 5 was instituted, voted against it, and he has been a champion for independent contractors in the state of California. Now he's holding the line for us nationally. He fought against the acting secretary, Julie Su, getting promoted to Secretary of Labor because she was the engineer enforcer of AB 5. And so he has done all that he can to try to stop this rule in its tracks. Now, along with Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, he has brought a Congressional Review Act, a CRA, which basically Congress gets to take a regulatory rule and look at it and say, is this constitutional? Is this going to work for the American people? And say, no, it does not, or yes, it does, and rescind it if it does not work. And so he is he has already dropped that review in Congress for consideration. Cassidy has dropped it on the Senate side. Cassidy is gathering other sponsors, other congressmen to get on board with it, to shore up support, as well as to ensure that it is voted through by Congress and by the Senate. So Missourians and everybody in the nation who listens to this show, call your representative and say, you need to get on board with this. You are about to threaten my livelihood.
Yep.
And I need you to stop.
Well, I'm making notes here. Because I have a startup medical practice, and I'm going to need some now and then workers, and now maybe I won't. I don't know what to do. You got me worked up here, Jennifer. Hey, thank you so very, very much, and I appreciate you spending the time with us and really outlining this so
mixed bag yesterday in the markets. Let me get there. Wednesday. So NASDAQ down nearly 0.5%. Dow closed up 0.1%. Why are we laughing?
I cannot believe what I just witnessed. I'm sorry. Continue, Stephanie.
All right. And the energy and material sectors led the gainers. Technology was the biggest loser. Let's get and since we just kind of covered business news a bit, got pretty serious there on the gig economy. So, NASDAQ 0.5% up yesterday, S&P up 0.19%. Currently, it looks like the futures are feeling good this morning. Everything is in the green, all kind of still less than 0.5% up. Are we getting another weather alert? Okay. All right. Well, okay. So since we got pretty serious, I'm going to get less serious now.
Oh, good. No.
Are you a prepper? Or do you have a
I have
a
food,
suspicion.
Seed, I have food, seed, water purifier stores. Not major, but I have them.
I had a small suspicion about you, Randy, on that item.
I do, yes.
And I think as we've gone through the pandemic, I think I'm becoming. Now I'm not actually prepared.
I was going to ask you.
I'm not as prepared as I should be, but I think I feel like I should be prepared. Whereas before I didn't give it much of a thought. But this apparently is a booming industry right now. A report about market research says that the global survival tools market is expected to reach $2.46 billion by 2030. That's a growth rate of about 7% between 2023 and 2030. And they are giving you a lot of tips on Fox Business today about what you need. Do you need a bunker? And it's being popularized. Mark Zuckerberg has said he's building his own 4,000 square foot underground shelter in Hawaii. Kim Kardashian, Tom Cruise, Shaquille O'Neal, they all have bunkers or safe rooms. It's a hot topic right now. And I think having lived through the last 5 years, I think these people might be spot on. But I don't know. I don't know if I could, I've seen them sell the big buckets like at the big box stores of just like 100 days worth of food. I don't know that I could eat.
I have those.
Why did I know
and
you
I
had
have
those?
I have flat plastic cases of those.
I don't know that I could eat like astronaut food.
I gave all the kids and their spouses water purification straws a year
floor that I want to highlight that will probably make its way to the Senate. One was whether this sets up the government to go after other platforms not tied to China. Another concern being a ban sets a bad precedent. Though members voting for the bill underscored TikTok will have the choice whether to divest from ByteDance or remain as part of that larger company. Now, next up, the legislation is going to have to pass the Senate before making its way to the president's desk. It does have bipartisan support there, but it could face a rockier future there, especially around concerns that it could impact free speech.
Well, that's some of the talking points back and forth about the TikTok divestiture that a bill passed by the House yesterday proposes to impose on TikTok within 180 days if it passes the Senate. There appears to be some at least high-level bipartisan support in the Senate from reports. We don't know where that's going to land. Our own producer, Hannah, is worked up over that. I mean, having just unbelievable anxiety over it. Right,
well,
Hannah?
So here's the thing. I'm informed, right? So I know it's not a, quote, TikTok ban.
It is not.
And we already have folks like Kevin O'Leary saying that they would be interested in purchasing TikTok should this pass the Senate and, an American company needs to buy it, right? So I'm not super worried. I'm more so worried for the young folks who are fully believing that this is a TikTok ban, and they're blaming the Republicans for it. And, Republicans are always trying to recruit younger voters, and I'm like, this is not the way, guys. It's not the way.
Do we really want Steve Mnuchin running TikTok? I'm just saying.
Well, and they said, like, the younger voters, TikTok did some sort of push notification by geofencing and said, call your representative right now. And they were calling, and they were, just frantic. And some of them had threatened that they were going to commit suicide, and they were emotional. And so I don't think that's helping TikTok's case. I think they've realized that. But it's not great.
That speaks to, there's a national security issue here. I wasn't aware of this, but apparently, this is what the legislators are saying. Okay, again, I don't know. Do we know? They're saying that, look, even when you're not using the app, it can use your front-facing camera to take pictures of you.
That's not a very flattering angle.
It's accumulating data from you all the time. Every keystroke that you do, whether you're on TikTok or not, as though it's almost like it's like a malware, right? In that they basically are having access to your life and your digital presence. Okay.
All sorts of apps do that.
But but they're not going to the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the bigger thing I'm worried about. And this is from a very authoritative source. I just give you one report from Reddit because you asked me if I was on Reddit.
Look at you, Randy.
I fear TikTok is poisoning my friends' mental health. I have 3 friends that I've known for years. Each one of them has slowly been spending more and more time on this app until they are utterly consumed by it. One of them spends all of her time outside of work on TikTok. She's almost completely stopped going outside or doing anything else. She constantly talks about how disgusting, stupid, etc. she is, and I feel like I'm constantly reassuring her otherwise. She's developing some pretty severe body image issues. One of them is terrified to leave her house because all the videos she's watched about women getting harassed and abused, even though she's never been personally had such an experience. Not downplaying violence against women, but I just think that this is presenting an unrealistic view that is infiltrating her mind. And these are 30-second clips of random people that can make whatever claims they want, and it almost seems that she's been traumatized by it. Third friend seems to be heading down a similar road. It's like the algorithms of the app are showing them more and more scary and negative videos. They're getting depressed. Okay, here's the deal. I feel about TikTok like I do about drugs. You don't think that this is psychological warfare? This is psychological warfare.
Yeah. But were you crazy? Were you crazy before and depressed before, and that's why you went down this rabbit hole? Or is TikTok making you crazy and depressed?
People have been saying these same concerns about social media since
my
whole life.
Yeah, you made my point, and I believe there is a direct causative influence. I know it. I've taken care of young women, younger than you, Hannah, your age and more, even older women in the 40s. They are affected negatively. I can speak mainly to women. They spend more time on social media. That's objectively true. The levels of anxiety and depression have skyrocketed. in concert with the explosion of social media. And here's the deal. I'm speaking now on an alternate ground, what it does with people. It keeps people away from being productive in the things that our good God gave us the skills to do. Amen. And would you say that again?
Amen.
Okay, and
Amen.
Here's my point.
I'll say it louder for the back
Whether
of the room.
it's drugs,
Testify, doctor, testify.
I've said it before, and I'm saying it again. I'm for legalizing, and I'm being a bit hyperbolic here, but to make a point. Let's legalize mushrooms, LSD, TikTok, 1,000 TikToks. As long as we abolish the welfare system, and it'll all correct itself. When people want the freedom to do whatever they want to do, poison their mind, be distracted from productivity, you know what I mean, you people who employ people, and you find people being distracted and not doing their job. I'm not saying everyone that is on does a little social media at work is not being a good worker. But I can tell you, I saw it in the medical industry. People spending more times on their social media than they were servicing patients. And that'd be fine. I'd say, good, you're fired. But do away with unemployment, welfare, it would all correct itself. They would throw away their phones tomorrow. They'd delete all the apps tomorrow.
I'm going to push back, though, on social media and body image and it causing depression because, again, I didn't have social media growing up. And there were tons of people who had problems with eating disorders and body image, and we were forced to watch Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera dance on MTV. So back then it was television. I mean, I actually think, and I've seen it in my own life. I went to a pool in the last 5 years, and there were people of all shapes and sizes wearing scantily clad, wearing bikinis, and I thought, as a high school girl, you could have never put me in public, in any size in a bikini. And I think there is a lot of body positivity on these apps. And you're seeing people, a lot of these social media influencers, they're of all colors, all genders, both genders, all colors, all sizes. And I do think I think it can be a positive force for folks.
Well, let me not be accused of being chauvinistic here. Young men hooked on video games. I don't want rules against video games as long as we do away with welfare. Because these guys are spending time living in their parents' basements, playing video games, not working, while small business people can't get workers. Well, I'm sorry, you can't have it both ways. With freedom comes responsibility. You can't have your freedom to ruin your life with mushrooms, LSD, marijuana, whatever you want. Not everyone will, but many people are.
Yeah,
and social media and video games, fine, do what you want, but don't ask me to pick up the pieces.
You're talking about the welfare system and and everything. I think Stephanie's point is an interesting one about the depression, and you cite the depression as well. For sure, there are young women out there who do look at this Instagram app and are looking at these other women in bikinis and stuff. I've heard it from people, and they feel like they have to look like that. But I remind people of the quote from President Theodore Roosevelt: "Comparison is the thief of joy." Comparison is the thief of joy. And I think be happy with and be proud of yourself. But Randy, to Hannah and to Stephanie's points, even not like what we're seeing now, even in a different era that you and I were in, there were people who refused to work. There's
always been those people.
There's always been some that just
But
don't.
as a proportion of the eligible workforce, it's not the same.
It's not like now.
Not even comparable.
I had a guy at a bank. I'm not going to say which one, and he's working 2 jobs. And he told me that all 3 of his roommates, they're all 22, 23, none of them work. I said, "You're kidding?" No, they don't work.
Are they still actively enrolled in school?
No. Well, one is, the others are not. I said, "What do they do all day?" And he said, "They play video games all day."
And again, look, I work with a couple of women who are some of the most active people on social media and also the most productive people I know. So you have to generalize when you're thinking about public policy. And I'm sorry, there's too many small business owners. When I've wondered, there's 10 checkout lines, only 2 are staffed. I asked the manager, and the lines back to the 3rd aisle back, it's a Saturday morning. Where are the checkout people? They call in sick on Saturday mornings because they were out partying or they were social media. I don't know what they're doing. There's something poisoning the youth of America. And part of it is with this access to immediate gratification, push a button and someone approves of me. Rather than
Go ahead,
sorry,
John.
Randy. Go ahead, John.
Well, as I was watching the coverage of the vote and all this on TikTok, it kind of came to mind for me that this may all be academic because, by chance, the parent company and all is wholly owned by the Communist Chinese Party, and they consider it sensitive technology and have said in the past that they have no intention of, exporting it into the hands of a foreign owner, whether that's Mnuchin or some thinly veiled Canadian front company.
No, you're right, but
and
look,
they also could just ignore what the Congress does, but it's the topic you're bringing up actually came up at the Ready board meeting yesterday, where Yearwood spoke. They said the unemployment rate, Bernie Andrews said the unemployment rate in Boone County is 3%. That's up about 1% from
that's of people who are in the employment force.
That's right.
Who are in the labor force.
Several people in the audience spoke and said they think it's actually higher than that. And almost all of them said they can't, and they're so desperate that they're trying to find high school kids to work. And there are people that are finding. I've talked to some of Mike Kehoe was up here in Columbia. They're using disabled people because the disabled people want to work. They do. They want to work.
Yeah.
And they worked out at that facility on Bearfield.
God love them. They're great workers.
And they work their tails off. And one of them, they were so excited to see Mike Kehoe, but one of them said, Mr. Kehoe, I'm so busy. I need to do my work. I can't visit.
Yeah. I got an idea, though, as a solution. I got an idea.
What's that?
Universal basic income. Yes, that's just what more we need, right? Oh, my God in heaven. What are we doing?
I'm thankful that tomorrow's a feel-good Friday because you're cranky today, Randy.
We've turned the social safety net into a hammock.
A what?
Into a hammock. And it's not going to work forever.
That's where,
a hammock?
A
hammock.
That's where Bing Crosby was in a hammock when he taped.
Don't you know what a hammock is?
He taped his commercial for I think it was Minute Maid orange
now,
juice.
You talk about depression. One reason I don't go on social media is I'm afraid I might feel so diminished and inadequate when I see that picture of Hauswirth in a Speedo on Instagram.
Just remember,
we'll be back with leftovers,
comparison is the thief of joy.
hurt herself if TikTok goes away. Didn't I
did
hear
not
you say that, Hannah?
No.
Isn't that what all the young people are saying? They're calling the congressmen and women. No, I'm kidding. I know you.
So here's my thing about that.
Okay.
I know, Stephanie sent a couple tweets last night of reporters saying that that's what they were being told. I'm not saying it's not happening, right? Like, I'm sure it has happened somewhere. I don't think it's probably as widespread or as folks are making it out to be. It's like the whole Tide Pod thing, right? One person on social media eats a Tide Pod and suddenly my whole generation is known for eating Tide Pods, right? It's not fair.
Okay.
And I told you to simmer down because you're like about to duke it out in the break room with our friend Larry Behrens.
Larry's going to. No, we're not. Larry was making the argument, which I think is a fair one. And he's going to be talking about it as he sits in for Gary today, Gary Nolan.
You were about to chest up, fight.
Better
I
watch
wasn't
out.
going to fight. We're just having a spirited debate.
Larry's got a pretty good left hook. You better watch.
He's good. No, Larry's very, very, one of the best communicators I know. He's a great guy, and really a great advocate for the anti-EV movement. So here's the deal, though. Yes, our parents said rock and roll is going to ruin your mind. But my point is, since the advent of social media in general, okay, MySpace, remember that first one, and then we'll go to whatever. Wasn't that the first one, John? MySpace or something? I don't know.
Yeah, that was back in the day.
Okay, and then as it's evolved to where it's ubiquitous, every person has 24/7 access to the entire world, and people who say they're your friends because you push a button. Okay, and you can get instant gratification for doing nothing. And some people fall down that road. They live for that is their reward. That's their paycheck. How many likes you get, how many friends you have.
That's some people's whole careers.
What does that do to materially make a difference in the world, right? And meaning whether it's bagging someone's grocery at the grocery store or, being an usher at the movie theater if you're a young person, one of those young people jobs, or, the pimple-faced kid at the reception counter at the counter at McDonald's. Okay. My point is, in the days when we were coming up with those threats that our parents warned us about, those Beatles are going to ruin your life. For me, it was, that disco. You kids and your disco. Okay. I knew that I didn't have anywhere else to go except my family, which would spank me, not support me if I was a lazy SOB. And it was basically you'd sink or swing on your own because the government wasn't there to give you Obama phones, Medicaid, debit cards, EDT, You see what I mean? So I'm okay with it, but I think I see it ruining too many people's great lives, and to use the skills that God gave them. They have, I think, in the back of their mind, the knowledge that, if I don't make it on my own, Uncle Sam is there to take care of me. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. A lot of the texters agree with me. I hate to tell you that, Hannah, but,
It's all right. It's all right.
Okay, what's left over for you, John?
Jefferson City Jays big state basketball title game tonight as they take on St. Louis de Smet. 5:45 the broadcast on KWOS.
I can't wait. It's exciting.
How about that?
It's going to be fun.
Haven't been in the state tournament.
It is for me because
at this level, 30 years.
Well, and I know de Smet's this is first class level play. This is great. So I really hope the Jays come through and at a minimum compete and hopefully kick their butts.
There you go.
Randy, tomorrow as we close out the show here, tomorrow's Feel Good Friday. It's also Red Friday. Remember everyone deployed.
Yeah.
Have you found a red shirt or a red tie yet?
I wore a pink shirt and a salmon-colored tie, according to HR. I posted it on video. Thank you very much on social media.
I can't believe you went and whined to HR.
That's close enough to red. In these days, you don't have to really do